This is Breaking the Blocks, and I'm your host, Rachel Pearman.
It often is what paralyzes us is fear. In my healing journey, one of the wonderful questions that I have learned to ask is, what's the worst thing that can happen?
So, hello, lovely viewer. If you have just joined us for the first time, welcome. This is actually season 3, the beginning of season 3. And so, if you're interested, make sure you check out the playlist because there are some pretty amazing interviews in the last 2 seasons of Breaking the Blocks. But today is the first new episode of our season. And I'm talking to Vendulka Battais. She's an amazing quilter and she has won lots of prizes for her quilting. But she realised that although it was wonderful to win those prizes and she was very happy, she was still feeling like she lacked something within herself. It's that whole thing of when you get that external validation and it doesn't fulfill you fully. You still feel a little bit empty or like there's something else that you need. And so she set off on her own healing journey to try and discover what it was that she needed. Did she find it? And how was that journey? Well, let's have a listen to the episode and find out. So I'm joined today by Vendulka Battais. What a fantastic name. Vendulka Battais. So much better than Rachel Pearman. And that's not even my real name, my stage name. But yeah, it's lovely to have you in the studio, Vendulka. And thank you so much for joining me today. So I'm going to start, Vendulka, by saying, where are you from originally? Where is that wonderful name from?
Well, it's a combination of Czech first name. So I'm originally from Czech Republic, but I have married a French name. So the surname is French.
Ah,
Yeah,
fantastic.
we like to
Okay,
just things up, you know?
yes, exactly. Yes, bringing it multicultural. We are on the show, multicultural.
Definitely, definitely.
That reminds me of Victoria Vanderlaan, who said she was almost tempted just to marry her husband because of his Dutch name. So she's Victoria, but he's Vanderlaan. And I said, well, it is a fabulous name, Victoria Vanderlaan. I mean, how fabulous is that?
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good. Good to marry a partner with a great second name.
Yeah.
Well, welcome. So now, where are you based in the world? Where are you actually living? You're in the UK, aren't you?
Yes, I'm in UK. I lived for a little while on the Isle of Wight, where both of my kids were born, but we settled in Suffolk and absolutely love it here.
Why did you choose to settle in the UK?
It's relatively simple. I don't speak French and he doesn't speak Czech, but we both speak English.
Okay. Yeah.
But also, quilting world is actually quite different in Czech Republic and a little bit in France. And I feel like what I do, I could definitely not do back in Czech Republic. I could maybe do it in France, but it would take me a long time to learn everything in yet another language in order for me to do what I do. So we decided to stay here so that to make life easier.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Yeah, I didn't think about the language barrier. So obviously, as you've said there, English is your second language.
Yeah.
Was this something you learned from being a young child, or was it something you've had to learn as you've come over to the UK?
No, I always had passion for English. I was 8 when the Berlin Wall fell, and when the Russians finally sort of left our country, and when we were able to then suddenly start learning different languages. So I've got older sisters, and their Russian teacher was my English teacher at school. So I never had to learn Russian. I went straight into English, and I think that I started at the age of maybe 11, 10, 11, something like that. So when I came to UK at the age of 24, I was able to have a conversation. It wasn't the standard that it is now, but I was already able to have a conversation and get by. But obviously, when I started to teach, I always thought that it's going to be like a problem, and yes, in a written world it was, and I always had to had my newsletters checked by somebody, and everything, but obviously that has improved as well. But also where it actually was to my advantage in my career is that because I don't know all those difficult big words, I speak and teach in relatively simple English, and that makes quite a difference. And therefore my patterns, which are written in, it's not simple English, but it's easy to understand. And that's what I've been always getting compliments on, that my patterns are easy to understand because I don't overcomplicate it. And that's because English is my second language. So actually, that's what looked at the beginning as a disadvantage turned into my advantage.
Which is a great way to look at it. A great way to look at it. And that makes sense, actually. That does make sense that you are thinking in, I'm going to use the word basic, but in simple terms.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what we need. I think we can often jump ahead in our lives, can't we, and overcomplicate things. And actually, it's great that you can just pull it back to its simplest way.
Yeah.
Can I just ask you that? Well, one thing I want to say is, first of all, I'm always impressed with anybody who learns a language to the extent that you have. And here you are having a conversation with me, because the idea of me going and learning, Czech or Russian or French or whatever language it is, and then sitting and having a conversation, I think is amazing. So yeah, so plaudits to you that you have learned another language.
Thank you.
That's a block that you've overcome there. But I just wanted to ask you about the Berlin Wall. So just out of interest, were you affected by that? I mean, I know, as you said, you were very young when it came down at 8 years old, but were your family affected by that Berlin Wall? Because obviously, from the bit that I know in history, it did just suddenly go up, like literally overnight, and families were separated for many, many years. So were you affected by that at all?
The way it affected us was so the Russians came to Czech Republic in 68 as friends with tanks. And suddenly we were under their influence, under their regime, and so was the East Germany. So everybody kind of remembers the fall of the Berlin Wall as the event. Around that same time, we as a Czechs said we had enough and sent the Russians to where they came from. That kind of liberated. It opened the doors. It opened the borders. Just from everyday life, it brought the TV series from America, from UK, which we've never seen before. It opened the borders to things, to import things. So we suddenly had products and brands that we didn't have before. So that was the difference. That was the influence that it had on our life. And one of the facts was that we didn't have to learn Russians, and we could learn all the other lovely languages.
Yeah. And it's quite a crucial time, isn't it? 8 years old in your life, actually. Well, there's a famous phrase, isn't there? Show me the child at 7 and I will show you the man. It was when they said the phrase, It was a man. So show me the boy at 7 and I'll show you the man. And I think it actually is quite a crucial time. So it's interesting that at age 8 that happened for you. The doors sort of open.
Yeah.
Were you always a creative child, Vendulka, or was that suddenly thrust upon you, or was that something that you can remember from being even younger? I mean, I don't know. When did it all start for you, the creativity?
Growing up, like being a child in a communism, you just had to get by with what you had. I've learned to get by with what I had. I remember going to these sales with my mom where they were selling fabrics by weight, and they were just remnants from some shops. And she would say, "Oh, I really like this fabric. Can you find me all the remnants from that fabric?" And those remnants were there because there was a fault in the print. And I remember getting a black marker, the equivalent of a Sharpie, and filling up that print, sort of like hiding that mistake. Creativity and definitely sewing was always something in our household. My mom was always making, I'm the youngest out of 3 girls, so she was always making clothes for us. And that's where my love for patchwork then started, because I loved the idea of having clothes and having things that nobody else does. So I would be then in my teens, I would be then going to the equivalent of a charity shops here, and I would buy the biggest clothes I could find, like in the largest size, because then I would have enough material to turn it into something for myself. And by unpicking, for example, the pair of trousers, by unpicking it, I then learned how it was constructed. So there was lots of learning through that not having enough, kind of, or not having abundance of everything, or the access to everything like we've got now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So when did you actually leave your country then?
24.
So I think you might have said that at the beginning. You were 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were 24. And where did you go, first of all, when you were 24?
UK.
You came over to the UK.
Yeah.
So do you feel that living under that communist rule from being very young has affected your choices? Because obviously, we haven't had that. And in the UK, I mean, as you said, suddenly at age 8, you had this kind of abundance of things started flooding in. And obviously, when you came over here, if you've got the finances, you can have what you want. But there's certainly, lots of things to choose from without having to be super rich. So do you feel like your upbringing has affected you in any way when you're suddenly presented with all of these choices? Let's relate it to the war, to like World War II. So obviously people were rationed.
Yeah.
And then the war finished, and I know it took many years to actually start for people to regain a regular life. It took a long time for food to start coming back into the country, etc. But I'm just thinking that then when food was in regular supply, did people suddenly become almost overwhelmed with the choices? You can either become overwhelmed by the amount of choice, or you could go the other way and just want everything and want to experience everything again. And I don't know how it affected people because I haven't talked to anybody who went through World War II, and it's an interesting question. But I'm just wondering, relating that back to you, when you've been brought up with very strict guidelines to, as we've said, a very important age in your life, to then suddenly be faced with lots of choices and lots of options. How did that affect you? Was it overwhelming, or have you always sort of stayed within your creative or just within your boundaries?
It has given me that sense and that motivation to achieve, to go and want more. Yeah. But that also can be the downfall, because like when you feel that you don't have enough, you think that when you're gonna have all those things, that they will bring you that joy, that they will bring you that feeling of enoughness. And we know that's just never going to happen. I was chasing it, I was chasing, like, I'm not saying the American dream in England, but in a way, that kind of like, making it in this world. But it's a very slippery slope, because when do you say that you've actually made it? When do you say, when is that point? And I've given myself those points, thinking that winning awards, it's going to give me that, and it didn't. Yeah, we're here to learn lessons, and we're here to learn the lessons that we're supposed to, and we're all doing it our own way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I saw a quote yesterday from Jim Carrey, and he said, I wish everyone could experience fame and fortune.
Yeah.
Because then they would realize that doesn't actually make them happy, and it's not what they wanted. Yeah. And I know a lot of people would go, it's easy for you to say that, you've got the mansion and everything. But I think he has been on an amazing journey, actually, if you read about him. And there is definitely something in it. And you've just said it there, haven't you? You chase these things. So yeah, that's interesting though, going back to the whole being brought up with a very strict regime and then been let loose into the world. And so in a way, it was kind of where I was going with the World War II
Yeah.
analogy and the food coming in, that suddenly you want all this food because that's going to make you feel maybe whole, or you're chasing something. So I wonder then, Vendulka, okay, that's interesting. So you've said it did make you want to chase the American dream. It did want to make you chase the awards and the success. Where do you think that was coming from? So let's go delve a little bit deeper then.
Mm-hmm.
What was it that was making you want to chase all of that?
From that inner feeling of not being enough, that we, so many of us, are trying to fill and hide, and that which is a source of why so many people, when they create something and then somebody comes and praise them, the first thing they point out are their mistakes, because internally they feel like, well, I'm not enough, my work is not good enough, I can't just accept that praise, because it's not good enough.
But where did that feeling for you of not being good enough come from? Was that something to do with your family, or was it something to do with this very strict upbringing from the society you were living in, from the country's rules?
It's a bit of both. One of the beliefs I used to carry, and I discovered that through a healing session. If anybody asks for it, I have to give it to them. Before the First World War, we were part of Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Then we had 20 years between the wars of being independent, and we were back then Czechoslovakia was among the top economically and industrial countries in Europe. But then the German came, and we just give them whatever they wanted. Once we've dealt with them, then the Russian came, and we've just given them. So it's kind of like we never had as a country that autonomy. There was always that feeling of yeah, we are less than everybody else. For me, I guess that's where it was coming from, and then sort of coming to the Western country, comparing myself, comparing my past and then my present with people around. That's where that not enoughness was stemming from.
Yeah. That's where ancestral trauma comes in, isn't it? Because I firmly believe that we all carry ancestral trauma. I've mentioned in a previous podcast that there have been experiments done with rats where they've bred rats and they've tested things on the original rats, and then they've bred rats, done a slightly different experiment, and their reactions have been the same because of the previous bloodline. It's bizarre. And how does that work? But it's proven that we carry these ancestral traumas. So I think for you, as you say, as a people, as a nation, even though you were 8 when things started to change, you're probably taking on some of your parents' burden and their parents' burden. So that is really fascinating.
I've got a very good German friend, and she actually lived in west part of the Berlin during the separation. As a country, as a nation, they are still carrying the guilt and the shame of one man. It's incredible. It takes generations and people doing their work and people saying, that's it, I will do the healing, I will do the work, and I will stop this trauma. And it takes a lot of courage to do that, but it is possible.
I know that we'll probably have some Germans listening, and it must be very difficult because as a nation, you obviously know your country's history, and we all know what happened in World War II. And we all see so many films, don't we, based on, the Holocaust and the absolute horror of it. And I think as a younger person, you don't want to be, as we say, tarred with the same brush. You don't want people to believe that you would have behaved as your predecessors did. As we know, people who did stand up, there were many Germans who did, and they lost their lives for it, and they were tortured. It's a very difficult part of history, and as you say, people are still living with that guilt and shame of what happened in that period. So how do you feel that you have overgiven? I mean, you mentioned there that you've been in healing sessions. So have you had therapy, if you don't mind me asking,
Yeah.
for, the issues?
Yeah, it didn't really start it for any particular issues. I just always had this inclination to spirituality, and you would always find me in the self-help section of the
Yeah,
library or a
me
bookstore,
too.
you know,
Yeah.
and things like that. But things really started to shift and change when I wouldn't really call it therapy. I would call it with healers, but it's just same but different. And actually went and learn a theta healing modality, which is a beautiful modality where you look for the patterns, where you look for the beliefs that are holding us somewhere, and you go, okay, what's underneath it? The biggest learning, the biggest thing that helps us is actually understanding, why are we holding on to those beliefs? How are they serving us? Take my sort of need for achievement. What was I sort of getting from that achievement? I was getting a sense of value. The trouble was that I was putting that value outside of myself. And the moment we put anything outside of ourselves, or the moment we put the condition of that feeling, whether it's accomplishment or joy or love, whether we put the condition of it outside of ourselves, we are signing up for a failure. Yes, there might be people who will think that we've done well, or they will like us, etc. There is just as the same amount of people who are going to be threatened by our happiness, by our success, and they will be the naysayers, they will be the haters, or what have you. And obviously, the more visible you are, the more successful you are, the more happy you are, the more you trigger people.
Totally agree with you there, because as soon as you do start having success, then you will get the people who want to kind of dull that light in you
Yeah,
because they can't find it within themselves. And then you start then comparing yourself, because then you'll start questioning yourself. If you haven't got it inside, if you haven't got that real self-worth inside, you won't believe it. You won't believe the success. That's why you keep seeking the validation, because you
exactly.
won't believe what anyone is giving to you. And as you say, you can win the best in show quilt at the Festival of Quilts, and I bet you were still sitting there thinking, but am I good enough, really?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. My need to achieve, I thought it will bring me that sense of achievement. And yes, okay, yeah, winning the best in a show in at the Festival of Quilts has brought me a sense of achievement. But I thought that I will feel better about myself, and that's the, and also I was giving it sort of out there. I thought that people will then think, oh, and the phone will start ringing, and will have bookings and book deals, and sewing machine ambassadorships and things like that, and suddenly the phone didn't ring, and you slip back into, oh well, there's something wrong with me, I'm not enough. So the moment we put that I am enough on somebody else to give us that feeling, we're just never gonna be happy. And so that was the biggest thing that I had to learn, to find that enoughness inside of me. And I feel like in me being a teacher, I feel like it's a really nice, like a stepping stone, or first step to feeling this way. Because when I teach, I try to instill in people that feeling of well, have you done your best today? And everybody says, well, yes, of course. Well, then that's enough. Is your best from today different from the one which is going to be in a year? Of course it is, but it doesn't make today's best better or worse than the one in a 1 year time. And it's the comparison, which, when we start to compare ourselves to other people's success, to other people's journey, and where they are on. That was another big thing for me, to drop comparing myself, and just take every day as it comes, and live every day doing my best. That's all we can do. One thing we kind of need to realize is that we are only responsible for our own joy, for our own happiness, for our own feelings. No matter what you do, you can't change what other people feel. And because of that, you should concentrate just first on yourself. It's not that we can't help others, that we can't do things for others. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is that we are only responsible for our own selves. We're not responsible for anybody else's happiness. And unfortunately, as a mother, that comes with our children as well. I can do my best for them, but I am not responsible for their own happiness, for how they feel. Because, like, for example, you've got these alcoholic parent, two siblings, one becomes alcoholic, the other one doesn't, never touches on alcohol. They both went through the same thing. They all had the same upbringing, but each of them is responsible for their own behavior. One takes it as oh, well, this is how to live my life. Okay, I'll continue the same as my parents. And the other one says, no, I'm responsible, I'm accountable to myself, and I'm choosing different. So we have to start with ourselves. We can inspire others, but we can't make them do anything. All the people who are listening to your beautiful podcasts, everybody's going to take from different episodes different things.
And you can't actually fix anybody else. Yeah. There's a great phrase as well, just to go back to something you said, there's a great phrase that says, heal your own wounds so you don't bleed all over someone else. And I think that is brilliant, because just going back to your cup being empty, if you are in a relationship with someone and you do not love yourself, you don't like yourself, you're just going to put that all over the person that you're dealing with, because you can't understand what it means to give someone unconditional love, to give someone real respect, to give someone real care and attention, because you can't give it to yourself. And maybe you can't give it to yourself because of your parents and what they gave to you. So going back to your alcoholic thing there with the parents and the children, the one child who was deeply affected by it is not able to break that cycle, and so they will then put that pain onto other people until they sort it out themselves, because the other person, the brother or sister, can't, as you say, they can't help that person. You've got to break your own addictions. You've got to, but you have to face these patterns as well. Oh, yeah. And that's the difficulty, isn't it, Vendulka? It's actually asking yourself those big questions.
Our life starts with ourselves. I was quite lucky that I don't even remember now what book it was, but it was one of the sort of first self-help book I've read in my teens. There was written something in a sense of when a life throws a big log in front of you, you can either find a ways how to climb over it, and while doing that, kind of better yourself, or it might be a sign, what, this is a wrong path, go somewhere else. But you can also take that log and carve something beautiful out of it. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
all have got those choices. And what we do with them is entirely up to us. And then comes back the non-judgment, not blaming ourselves for all those times when we thought, oh no, I'm just going to take this easy route through here. Sometimes that is the path. We don't always have to climb over every obstacle. Sometimes we might have the inspiration, the courage, the strength to turn that into something beautiful.
And I think also, Vendulka, another really important thing to raise there, and I did a reel about this the other day actually, is if you feel like trying to climb that log and you start walking down the path and then you realize that you've made a mistake, you realize you've either been on this path before or you're on the wrong path. It's fine as long as you turn around and go back to another path. Maybe not go backwards, but find another route off, find another path off. It's okay to make mistakes, which is what you're saying there. Don't judge yourself. And, if you do go back to that log, then that comes to what you just said. Make something beautiful out of it. Realize that you took the path. It was the wrong path, but you took it, you felt it, you've learned from it, and now you can make something lovely from that experience because it was a lesson. You're going to move forward in your life and make positive moves. So don't judge yourself for making a mistake, because I think that's the problem. A lot of people don't walk over that log because they're frightened. It's the wrong direction. But sometimes you've got to take the wrong path to realize why it's the wrong path. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And also, again, it's kind of judging the path as wrong. If you've learned something from it, then it was never wrong.
Exactly.
We are every day doing our best, and we are growing, we are learning. And another of my favorite quote is, only people who do nothing make no mistakes.
But they don't grow either. And they often don't change. So they just stay absolutely stuck and rooted in there. And that's when the victim mentality comes on. That's when someone sits there and says, I'm trapped, I can't do anything. I heard yesterday, I was driving to pick up my daughter and the Bruce Springsteen song came on, Dancing in the Dark. And it was one of the first times that I listened to the lyric yesterday and saw something new in that lyric. Because, of course, in that song, he says, I want to change my clothes, I want to change my hair, I want to change my face. I'm just getting older, I'm just tired. I live in a dump like this, I've got to change something. And then he says, you can't start a fire without a spark. So this gun's for hire, even if we're just dancing in the dark. And what he's actually saying there is, in order to get that spark, you have to light it in the dark. No one is going to give you the light. No one's going to put the light on for you. No one is going to, yes, people can kind of guide you a bit, but no one is going to create that spark except you. And unfortunately, quite often you have to start that from a dark place.
Yeah.
So you have to start dancing in the dark.
And also, it often is what paralyzes us is fear. In my healing journey, one of the wonderful questions that I have learned to ask is, what's the worst thing that can happen? And when you face that and you go deep, like, okay, well, so that's the worst thing that could happen. And what would be the worst thing about that? When you go quite deep, you realize that quite often you come back to that not enoughness or the fear of being alone. By not doing that action, you are already there anyway.
Yes.
You're already alone anyway.
Yes, exactly. It goes back to the validation that we were talking about.
Yeah.
If you don't do anything about it to fill that hole within yourself, you are going to end up always feeling alone because no one is going to validate you enough. But also you run out of people and you'll end up on your own. And you'll hurt people along the way because you'll be using them for validation. And eventually those people do turn around and go, hang on a minute, what am I getting out of this? I'm just giving you what you want, and they will leave. So yeah, you're absolutely right. What is the worst that can happen? If you stay where you are in that uncomfortable spot, you're going to stay uncomfortable anyway. So you may as well get uncomfortable in trying to do the change. So Vendulka, what did you do for yourself then? Because we talk about healing journeys. And I think I've had, a friend or two who has said to me, but how do you do it? What's the work that you talk of? Doing the work. What's the work? What do I do? So what did you do to start filling that void within yourself? I mean, obviously you realized that winning that award did not bring you the happiness that you craved. So how did you find it? What did you start to do?
For me, it was going inward. I started with meditations. The modality that it was theta healing, and I fell in love with it so much that I became actually practitioner as well, so that I could help others too. Having those uncomfortable conversations with myself, because if we just keep avoiding them, they just gonna be more and more uncomfortable. So it's kind of like, what are you waiting for? You know, if you want to feel better, you have to start sitting with those uncomfortable moments and ask yourself, why am I feeling uncomfortable? What is beyond that? Quite often is guilt, is shame, is the fear. And when we face it, when we learn to be comfortable in that uncomfortableness or in that discomfort, that's when the peace comes. That's when the joy comes. That's when the freedom comes.
One thing you have said to me is, that you're now entering competitions because you want to, give something back to yourself. But then you did that before because you were awarded the best in show. So what's the difference then? Where's the change? How are you going to approach things differently? What's the rest of your journey, the next part of the journey?
So I've actually, in the last couple of years, qualified as a quilt judge as well. And that actually has taught me quite a lot. I can't be putting my worth into other people's hands. I feel like I've changed the reasoning why I'm entering now. And that is just to share my love for quilting, just to share the joy. If another award is going to happen, of course it's going to be great. Of course it's going to be, fun. It's not going to change how I feel about myself. So it's that intention behind it that has definitely changed.
Do you ever feel yourself slipping back? We've talked there about when you make mistakes. So do you ever feel yourself slipping back into an old pattern? And how does that feel for you?
Of course, we all will slip. Of course, things will happen, but it gets easier. It definitely gets easier. And like you said, it is that awareness. And having that awareness, I've been part of this beautiful sisterhood, kind of, that my meditation teacher has created. We meet up every Thursdays and have a theme every month. The main theme we work through is a surrender. And we read the Michael Singer's book, The Surrender Experiment, and we work with kind of strongly influenced by his work. You face the problem, the issue, the something, and then you go through period of kind of slipping and stepping back, and slipping and stepping back. But the gaps between these slips are going to be bigger and bigger and bigger.
And the slip, I think, is going to be smaller. I think the slip, if you go back into the pattern, you very quickly realize, oh, I'm back in the pattern. Oh, I've got to get out. So it's a smaller fall.
Yes.
A smaller fall.
Exactly. Yeah. And that is the journey. What really helps is to have the right people around yourself. Surround yourself with people who can lift you from where you are, not keep you there. If you always hang out with the same people, how are you ever going to change? Yeah.
And another thing that I read the other day, Vendulka, which is really important as well, is you have to go through that pain barrier, because for people who have been repressing their emotions and pushing them down and not facing things, they can think to themselves, right, I need to get help. I need to do this. I'll get myself a therapist. And at first, the therapist will give you the validation and attention, and it will feel amazing. So you'll sit there going, oh, I'm healing. Oh, I'm talking to my therapist. I'm healing. But maybe sort of 9 months in or so, when that therapist starts getting down and down and start asking you the really difficult questions that you have to face about yourself, that's when a lot of people stop their therapy, because that's when it's like, oh, wait, hang on.
This is not
What?
as pleasant as I thought it's going to be. Yeah.
This is not the fun ride I was hoping. You're now challenging me.
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. You have to be challenged. Like we
Yeah.
said, you have to face those difficult things.
Have you heard of Neil Donald Walsh?
No.
So he wrote books, Conversations with God. I don't know if it was in one of those books or but there is a story of a soul, and it resonates with me because in my world I do believe that we've got a soul, and everybody's got the soul, and that soul just came here on earth to learn certain lessons. In this story, this little soul wanted to experience forgiveness. So in order to do that, another soul said, all right, I'll come down with you and I'll help you with that. But you have to remember, or in order for you to forgive me, I have to do something really bad to you. But I am doing it because on a soul level, I really, really love you. And I want you to have this experience. I want you to have this lesson. Again, it doesn't justify abuse or anything bad, but it just shows us the whole thing from a different perspective. On a soul level, I feel that it's actually so difficult to put that karma on ourselves of hurting another in order for them to learn the lessons that they have to learn.
I wonder what happened to that soul, though, that abused the person so they could experience forgiveness. That's a fascinating idea. I'm going to have to ask you a question, though, Vendulka. From the way you're talking, have you, being a victim then, is this part of your story? Because the lack of self-worth and is that you don't have to go into it, but is this part of your story?
Strangely enough, it isn't.
Okay.
And this is where when I started my healing journey and learning about theta healing, I kind of felt sometimes like an imposter, because I was just like, why am I here? I had beautiful childhood. I've got beautiful relationships with my sisters, with my parents. It's just like, what why am I here? What am I healing here from? But when you were saying that generational trauma, I also believe that we are not only passed down the harsh lessons, but we are also passed down the good lessons as well. And I feel that one of the gifts from my ancestors is that you do not have to learn the hard way. And that's why I've got that approach to life of, well, if I'm facing some difficulty, okay, what is it? What am I learning from this? Rather than turning my back to it. Because it's when we turn our back to it, it then comes and haunts us as worse. Yeah. So in a way, I am embracing the fact that maybe I am here to show people that if they do the healing, if they do the work, then this is the life, like my life is then what they are then creating for the future generations, that they don't have to learn through the hardship, through the struggle, and through the trauma.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way of looking at it. Really, once again, really interesting. And my first thought was, okay, I want to be a soul returning through your bloodline, because I want to finish the next life with all this learning and not have any of this bad stuff to go through. So yeah, that is a great way of looking at it. Yeah, it is true. So what is there to learn for you then, Vendulka, still? Because obviously you've been on this journey, you've learned an awful lot. You're now going back into re-entering this world and doing things for yourself, which will bring you accolades and validation, but now you'll receive it from a different angle. But what lessons do you think you still have to learn then? What do you still have to overcome?
I feel I'm just gonna let the universe show me.
Yes. Do you believe in signs from the universe?
Definitely, definitely. Things are not happening for no reason, and I'm definite believer of coincidences and synchronicities and things like that. Definitely, and however we decide to communicate with the spirit world, with our soul, with our guides. I very happily believe in all this, what some other people might call nonsense, but I strongly believe in all that. And I've got my oracle cards that I sometimes just sort of ask for guidance and things. And definitely, if it works for you, if that's how you get the answers, surely, yeah.
Yeah. When it comes down to it, Venduka, in this life, we need to find peace. And I think everybody listening to this podcast would agree with that, because everybody will have been through some sort of trauma in their life. Maybe they're still in it. And that's the whole thing, is breaking the blocks. How do we break those blocks? And I think, well, interestingly, sometimes I don't think we have to break anything. As you said, you're coming from a place of not being broken, but you're still healing. And I think it is about just finding that peace. And when you find the peace, you find the freedom. And so in whatever way you can find that peace, that is the route to follow.
Yeah.
And as I've said, if it's for me looking at number plates and trucks that go past and taking signs from the universe, and then working that through, and working through as a process, that's great. Meditation, I think, is a wonderful thing. You don't have to sit there in yoga pants. You can simply close your eyes. If you're in the car waiting for the kids at school and you've got 15 minutes, sit in the car, close your eyes, and just listen to what your subconscious tells you, listen to what your intuition is telling you, listen to what your inner self is telling you, your higher self, if you want to take it that way. But that can be meditation.
Yeah.
There are so many different ways. Read things, listen to podcasts, but just, Benduka, keep searching. Because the day you stop searching and the day you think you're healed, life is just worthless and meaningless. You have to keep searching. And that's searching through people, relationships, love, freedom, peace, happiness, exploration. We have to keep exploring. That's what we are as
Yes,
human beings.
definitely. And also it's finding the right teachers, the right books, the right communities. It's definitely helpful. There is a time for advice from, in my case, a healer, or and for somebody is a therapist, somebody who can guide you on that journey to self. But it is a journey to self, yeah. And let's be honest, nobody knows you better than yourself. Nobody's walked your shoes. And it's so easy nowadays to be distracted by the screen, by life, that we forget that actually we've got all the answers. That is the most valuable thing, and all the wisdom is inside of you. You just need to quiet for long enough time, whether it's walk in the nature or sitting on a cushion with some nice music, whatever it is. That's what the experience here is about. It's a journey to remember who we are, to remember what we are, that we are not a physical vessel with a little soul, but we are a big, massive, amazing soul with that tiny little, very limited body that we have to deal with, but we are so much more, and we just need to remember. So,
Exactly. And gain that perspective. Step right back, from that person who's doing that thing or that job that you're in or whatever. Step right back and realize just how tiny that is when you step back into the universe and you look down at what's actually happening. And like you say, see yourself as this soul here to learn. And it's not easy, it's difficult, but it's so important. But people like you're raising the consciousness, you're raising this vibration, you're raising people, and that is a wonderful thing. to do, and as you say, to quiet the soul as well, because I think a lot of people do the search in this. I think that's the first thing you do, the scrolling. You're reading the books, you're looking at the memes, you're looking at the quotes, the little paragraphs that people do. Yes, all great, but that's the beginning. In the end, it comes down to being quiet and being honest with yourself, asking yourself those difficult questions.
Yes.
So Vendulka, I always ask this at the end of an interview, and it has been absolutely amazing listening to you today and hearing so many brilliant words of wisdom.
Thank you.
What is your motto? Do you have a motto that carries you through your life? I mean, you've said about 36 today, but is there one big motto that you feel you always come back to?
Definitely every cloud have a silver lining. And so whatever happens, trying to find the lesson, the good in it. When we are deep in it, it's very often very difficult to see that good. Not be too quick at judging anything that happens to us as, oh, that's a horrible thing, or that's a brilliant thing, because it's just with that time that we're gonna see how it's turned out. And that comes with a beautiful story of a farmer who his horses run away, and people came, oh, what a horrible thing, your horses sort of run away. And he said, well, it is what it is. And 2 days later, that horse came back and brought 4 other wild horses with it, and they were like, oh, this is amazing. You've got now, 5 horses. How amazing is that? And he said, well, it is what it is. And then his son was trying to tame one of the horses and broke his leg. And people came and they said, oh, what a horrible thing. Your son has broken his leg and now he can't help you work. And he said, well, it is what it is. And a couple of days, the army came and they were taking every young, healthy, able man into the war with them. And he had a broken leg. So they didn't take him. They didn't took him. So then the villagers came again. Oh, what an amazing thing. So, that not judging what is happening to you and just let the universe show you is what beauty it's bringing to you. That is probably the biggest lesson, the biggest motto, the biggest thing I am living my life by, and that has served me well in many situations.
100% agree with you. And likewise, if you experience, I mean, that farmer did, you experience some pain, it's awful at the time. If you make a mistake, it's awful at the time, but just know that in a few days or a week or a month, or there will be some meaning to it. And you'll go, I am so glad that thing happened.
Yes.
Because it showed me something. It showed me something about myself, or it showed me something about the other person. It showed me something that I needed to see. Even if you think you've made a misstep, you've done something wrong, you will have learned from it. I've had this experience so many times. My husband, he had a heart attack. That heart attack has given him 6 months now to reassess how hard he was working. He's 60. Also, his diet, he was a smoker. And for years I had said, you are a heart attack waiting to happen. Guess what? It happened. He no longer smokes, changed his lifestyle, got very fit. But recently he had to go back and have his driving reassessed by the company he was working for. And they have said that there were a couple of things that they weren't that sure about, and they want him to have more instruction. And he's been doing this job for 3 years. So he was quite irritated. He was like, well, I haven't sat in a truck for 6 months and you've put me through a driving test, basically. Mm-hmm. And of course, he is still qualified. It's not a driving test. Yeah. It was their driving test. 4 days later, a job came in with another company that was much better working hours, was going to give him more time off to recover from his driving, and he's going to be much better for his lifestyle. And I said to him, you see, the universe always has a plan. He was disappointed. He wanted to get back to work, but actually a much better opportunity has come in because he couldn't work for that company. And that company is they're still wanting to be reassessed. But I said, yeah, but now you have another opportunity. So take that path. If it doesn't work out, you can still go back and then renegotiate where you are. But you're being given another path to choose. And that's how sometimes things work out. So always see the silver in the cloud lining. And that leads us beautifully back to the very beginning of the interview when you mentioned about that piece of fabric that had the error in it, that had the
like a mistake in the print. Yeah.
And something was made that was beautiful out of it. Yes. You couldn't have written this, could you? You could not have written this interview. You really couldn't. But it's been an absolute joy. And of course, I do wish you much success with your entrance into the FOQ. And for anybody listening as well, we should say that Vendulka is teaching with us over on Crafty Monkeys a wonderful quilted jacket. So head over to the website there, craftymonkeys.com. Little plug there for the other sister company. If you want to work with Vendulka, that would be a great way to do it. But I'll put all the details, Vendulka, of where people can follow you in the description box, wherever people are listening or watching this, so that people can see your wonderful work and get to work with you in some shape or form. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute privilege and a joy. And you've said so many things that we all need to take on board, whoever we are and wherever we are in our life.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. It was real joy to share all the wisdoms that I have learned on my healing journey, and happy to be here and happy to support people wherever they are.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just one thing to say, because you've done this healing journey, by the way, you're going to be able to give back to people more than you ever gave when you felt you were overgiving. Because you were giving from the wrong place. And now you've actually found yourself and healed yourself. What you give to people will be worth so much more than it was back then. So in the end, it's a full circle for everybody. It's a win-win.
Definitely. It's a win-win. Thank you.
Just before you go, lovely listener, can I ask you a favour? If you have a friend who you think would enjoy listening to this podcast, would you mind please telling them about it? It helps me to spread the word, and you never know, they might get a life lesson out of it, or at the very least, just have a lovely 40 minutes of relaxing time for themselves. The second thing to say is that if you have enjoyed this, it would really help me if you would give me a little quick like or a comment, especially if you're listening on one of the podcast platforms. It just means that when anybody lands on the page, they can see that people have reviewed it, they've liked it, enjoyed it, and got something out of it. So if you wouldn't mind leaving me a review, that would be amazing. And the final thing to say is that if you are a business and you're thinking, how do I get my message out there? Well, you could do it on this podcast. All you have to do is reach out to me, rachel@breakingtheblocks.com. The details are below in the box. Thank you so much to everybody for listening and enjoying and saying the lovely things that you're saying.